Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We don't know where you are or whether you're listening or whether you're watching, but this will be on the archive. So you can pick up today's comments on the archive. It is Friday, December the 26th, 2008. And this year is rapidly coming to a close. My name is Irv Homer, and we do this little get-together Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 4 until 5. Starting today, actually. We were going to wait till the end of the year, but we decided to go with it now. So if you want to catch the program and you're catching this on the archive, you're going to have to change your listening schedule from 6 to 7 to 4 to 5. Once again, my name is Irv Homer, and if you've never heard of me before, don't worry about it. I've been in the market of talk radio for many, many, many years, practically 40 years, doing television on Channel 6 in Philadelphia, which is an ABC affiliate, and broadcasting on at least 5 radio stations in my career. One, WWDB, for 25 years, and did not lose the job, but the station changed format. So I have never been fired from talk radio. I have never been dismissed from. In fact, the matter is, I've never been fired from any job, which is amazing. But be that as it may, welcome, welcome, welcome. The day after Thanksgiving 2008, the sales are in, and allegedly the sales both on the internet and on the retail outlets are about 4% lower than last year, which is, I would say, about the same. And you ask me why that the sales are about the same. Well, there are additionally in America about 25 million more people this year than there were last year. So if the sales remained the same, they would have been per capita higher. But if you take a look at the figures, the sales have been about the same, so don't panic. The big question is, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not there is a depression, recession, how it affects you. You hear the doom and gloom all the time. You read in the paper about the market. But as I drove around this holiday season, and including today, I saw no indication that there was any recession of any kind. Traffic, outrageous. Stores, shopping centers, malls, jammed. They must be doing something. I mean, it doesn't add up. And I think that the biggest percentage of people are not being hurt, not being affected one bit. I think what has happened is that the long-range investments, where people may depend on the future to get money, is not there. But I think there is plenty of money around right now. And the thing that disturbs me more than anything else is what is known as vacuous conversation. And vacuous conversation basically is conversation that has no intrinsic value to it. When you ask people, as I did today on my commercial radio station, unless it's me, I had mentioned, since America's in a state of limbo right now, between the transition between Barack Obama and President Bush, and you read the paper, you hear the news, are you making any arrangements for the year 2009? Or do you think, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest percentage of people just sitting, scratching their behind and picking their nose and just waiting to see what's going to happen, not looking forward to any dramatic change in your financial status, not looking forward to maybe learning a new skill, thinking that the old system is going to work? And it just boggles my mind that there seems to be no impetus in the news media, talk radio, of any plan of what can be done. And what plans are you making? Now, Barack Obama has not been sworn in yet as President of the United States. And if you tune around the dials, he's been criticized for everything under the sun. He hasn't done anything yet. So I don't have the faintest idea of anticipating what's going to happen by Barack Obama once he gets sworn in until he gets sworn in. The right-wing talk show host, well, he picked this one, and he picked that one, and he picked the other one, the cabinet's the old Clinton cabinet, blah, 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 blah. And I said on my last program, if these guys that are so brilliant, that they know the answers to everything, why in the hell don't they run for office? So I tried to put together a president, vice president, and a cabinet made up of all the experts and geniuses that know all the answers. It's very easy to criticize something, but if you don't have an answer, keep your damn mouth shut. But no, they talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and don't have any answers. All you hear from these nitwits on the right, well, what would Reagan do? Well, let's find out what Reagan did. Good communicator, nice looking guy, divorced man. His first wife, Jane Wyman, said that he was a complete and total bore. But I guess we tend to forget, ladies and gentlemen. We tend to forget. And so I am looking forward with bated breath for the future of this country after January the 20th, when Barack Obama gets sworn in. We're broadcasting from irvhomer.com. My website is www.irvhomer.com. You can email me at evilerv@irvhomer.com. RGH Computer Services for all your computer needs. Your computer problems is as close as your telephone, and that number is 215-322-8685. 322-8685. We'll put you in touch with RGH Computer Services, and we'll get your answers. We do have a chat room here. I know that it's a busy day today. I still think it's Monday, but it is Friday, December the 26th. And tomorrow is Saturday, and then Sunday, and then we wait for New Year's Eve. Of course, everybody today said, I swear, I'm not going to eat that much again. Well, you're going to be doing the same thing New Year's Eve. You're going to be, yes, we have a, you know.
Well, isn't that the same thing when the person who drinks too much and they're praying to the porcelain god? I'm never gonna drink that much. I'm never gonna
drink as much
again. Next weekend, what do?
And
they go back out and
do the same thing all over
again.
Well, the funny thing is that a lot of people today ran to Jenny Craig and ran to Weight Watchers and ran to Nutrisystem to see how much they gained from yesterday's meal, but I don't think it reflects the next day. I think maybe 2-3 days from now.
No, it can reflect a week later.
About a week later. So for those of you that felt good today, don't feel that good, because it may reflect a couple of days from now as to how much weight you put on. We have a chat room here, and we have a question on our chat room. Once again, let me remind you, we do have a telephone that you can call in at 215-253-8877. 215-253-8877. Our first question is, Irv, maybe the worst is not here yet. Well, the question is, my dear friend, what is the worst? And what is the worst that is going to happen? It's a vague term. The worst of what? The worst of economic times? The worst of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan? The worst of the peace that may take place in Iraq and Afghanistan? The projection now, or the 5-year projection, that we will be the victim of terrorism for the next 5 years. But it's amazing that this time of the year, when the festivities and the Eagles and other team, the war, these problems still go on. And I really don't like to be the prophet of doom, but damn it, I know that we've got some major problems that are going on right now while we rest very comfortably and celebrate the holidays, there are people who are willing to destroy America, destroy our means of culture, destroy our method of living. And somebody has to keep the Boobus America alert to the fact that because you're celebrating the holidays and having parties and seeing your folks, which is all great, all good, but liberty, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And that means you've got to watch yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The worst may not be here yet. The problem is, my dear friend, on our chat room, the worst of what? And so today, on a little radio station, it really is, it's a delightful place, but it has no audience. I have no audience there. I don't kid myself. There's a program that precedes me. If they get 6 calls, then those are the 6 calls I get. So it's really just a chatter an hour, and I feel good and I go home. There's no in-depth conversation in the area that I broadcast in. And so I decided to use this, and there's not a hell of a lot of in-depth broadcasting here because there's not that big of an audience since we've changed time schedules. So in answer to the first question, Irv, maybe the worst is not here yet. You must remember when they say the Great Depression in the late 20s and the 29s and 30s, there were only 25% of the people during the Great Depression that lost their job. But the bottom line is that I think of the worst is how many more fraudulent investment companies are going to show that they've lost money. And where did the money go? Where did these trillions of dollars go? Just disappear in thin air? And it's mind-boggling. So hang on to your shorts, my dear friend. I don't see how it can get any worse for me personally. Since I'm not a stock market advocate, I'm a very conservative investor, have managed to keep my debt to a very minimum, which means absolutely nothing. My cost of living is my debt. My gas bill, the electric bill, taxes, that's my debt. But I'm very fortunate, not bragging about it. I happen to be in a very, very comfortable position. But there's no such thing as security today in employment, and there's no such thing as security today in being in business. The competition in business is a fraud because the ultimate purpose of competition today, as opposed to years ago, is to put you out of business. Your competitor is there to put you out of business, not to share the spendable dollar. So the competition has changed from competing to acquisition. Look at the big boys, what they do. What do they call them? Hostile takeovers. You've got to learn the language, ladies and gentlemen, how this game is played. Our next question on our chat room, our telephone number once again is 215-253-8877, 215-253-8877. Irv, who has done more damage to the U.S., Bin Laden or the neocon movement? I would say the neocon movement, my dear friend, and I'll tell you why. Because Bin Laden, or whoever was responsible for 9/11, and you know my position is that Bin Laden did not cause 9/11. Bin Laden, in my opinion, is the Lee Harvey Oswald on the killing of John F. Kennedy. And if you remember when Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested in the Texas police station, he said, "I'm a patsy." And nobody ever investigated what Lee Harvey Oswald meant by that. He said, "I'm a patsy." Well, it would make sense to me. The chief Wade, who interrogated Lee Harvey Oswald for over an hour, would have said, "What do you mean you're a patsy? Who set you up?" And I feel that Bin Laden had been set up by somebody. Namely, my opinion is the Saudi Arabian government. And the neocon movement under our great fearless leaders like Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, the others of the original Bush cabinet, did exactly what bin Laden or what Saudi Arabia wanted to do, to get involved in a no-win war that we've been in now for almost 8 years, that we're not going to win. Now, the Iraqi people may win. The Afghans are not going to win. They're going to win. We're not going to win in Afghanistan. What is there to win there? The Army today, according to the latest figures released, must increase in the year 2009 50,000 more troops for the projected commitment that we have in Afghanistan and Iraq. And for the year 2009, we will need an additional $1 trillion to maintain our military commitments around the world and the projected military commitment in Afghanistan and Iraq for the next years to the year 2010. The end of the year 2009, if we're not out of Afghanistan and Iraq, that war will cost us more than World War II. So the neocon movement, in my opinion, fell victim to let's get Saddam Hussein and get him out of there, and let's go after the Taliban, and let's go after Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, who was our ally against the Russians. And we will never defeat the Afghan Taliban or Al-Qaeda or the drug warlords in Afghanistan. Apparently, we didn't learn from the Russians, where they lost 16,000 troops and they were forced to leave. And they're still paying for it. Any more that we went into Vietnam after the French were defeated in Vietnam, and we didn't win in Vietnam. And the history of going into Afghanistan and Iraq is the same history that we got involved in Vietnam. Somebody is making money out of this thing, and it ain't me and it ain't you. Our next question is, Irv, will we wind up like the Soviets in Afghanistan? The answer is yes. It's going to suck our economy dry. It's going to drain our military. The fact is that people aren't even talking about it. So you see an article in the paper about a serviceman who came home, he holds his kid, nice little community to have a parade. But the average American person don't give a rat's ass about the war in Afghanistan or Iraq. They're more worried about whether or not the Eagles are going to make the playoffs in Sunday's game against Dallas. And that's the name of the tune. So we will end up like the Soviets in Afghanistan. And the Soviets are doing everything they can to help the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda to defeat us, as we help them to defeat the Soviets. The history of the ignorance of the American people, and unfortunately the American politician, in the history of Vietnam, the history of Korea, the history of Iraq and Afghanistan, is so mind-boggling to me that I am at a point of frustration, and I'm almost reluctant to get together in a social gathering. And I keep making promises to myself, Irving, when you get together in a social gathering, keep your mouth shut. Let Boobus America talk about things they know nothing about. And so I had the occasion yesterday to be with some very dear friends and acquaintances, come up from Florida. And I did something yesterday that I haven't done in years. I always had a glass of vodka in my hand. And I figured every time I was going to open up my mouth, I took another swig of vodka. And what I liked about it is I didn't even have a hangover today. I feel pretty good. And I'm going out tonight with some friends that came up from Florida who called me yesterday. And I'll probably have another swig of vodka later tonight. But I'm not driving, so I don't have to worry about it. But the frustration is, and I suppose you people have, some of you folks may have encountered the same thing. My father, bless his soul, had a saying once. He said, there's no point in arguing with a jackass because eventually nobody knows who the jackass is going to be. And so it is extremely difficult for me, who has shot his mouth off for lo these many years on radio and television, to be in a social gathering and listen to the bullshit from good people. These are not people that are evil people. They're good people. They're hardworking people, honorable, abide by the law, not the con artists. They just don't know. They just don't know. I was interviewed today by a reporter, one of the national newspapers. How he got my name? Well, my name come up to him 5 years ago on a story, and he's doing a rewrite of the story, and he decided to call me and get my point of view. And this reporter had the faintest idea of what the hell's going on, or what was going on 5 years ago at the first conversation that I had with him. And so he said, I've got to meet you in person again and interview after the first of the year. And I said, to what avail? What purpose would it be, my dear friend, for me to tell you things that you should already know? Because A, you're not going to believe half the stories. B, your editor won't allow you to publish it. Or C, you're going to distort the story so bad that I won't recognize it if I read it. But we agreed to mutually meet after the first of the year, and I'll keep you up to date on this interview. Once again, we have a telephone number, 215-253-8877, if you want to call in, and to our chat room that is available. Could this ongoing downward spiral help destroy the neocon movement, or are they too entrenched in power? The problem with any movement, whether it be to the right or to the left, my dear friend, is that these projections are made in 5-year increments. Military contracts are 5-year increments. Policies are 5-year increments. And so we are still paying now for the first 4 years of the Bush administration. And whether Barack Obama likes it or not, for the next 4 years after he gets inaugurated, we will be carrying out the financial and moral commitments and legal commitments that have been made under the last 4 years of the Bush administration. The neocon movement is not going to be destroyed by the downward spiral. Instead of accepting any responsibility for their constant badgering of Bill Clinton for 8 years that he was in office, or making excuses for the 7 years, soon to be 8 years, of George Bush, they will jump on the bandwagon and say we need more military, we didn't fight them hard enough, we don't spend enough money for military hardware, we must build a missile defense system, and they will scare the living hell out of the American people instead of using the things that we have at our hands the most. And that is freedom, the ability to be free, and instead they want to imitate exactly the dictatorships that are around the world. And since most people, my dear friend, are willing to serve in slavery or ignorance than to do something about it, this will only help the neocon movement to move further ahead and stronger. So this downward spiral, the responsibility of it, the neocon movement in America is not going to accept any responsibility for whatsoever. You've heard them say the reason that the country's in the financial state that it's in is because George Bush really wasn't a conservative. If he would have done what Reagan done, we wouldn't be in this mess. And so instead of saying we elected George Bush twice, supported him, they're now throwing Bush under the truck. Well, he didn't really be a conservative. As the neocon movement in America says that the liberals and the left wing is intransigent, their position is one of accepting no guilt or no responsibility for the last 8 years. You've never heard one of these neocons on radio or television ever say that we were wrong in going to Afghanistan or Iraq. Never heard them once say it. But what they will do is criticize President Bush because he expanded the government too big, too much government, constantly quote Ronald Reagan, the government is not the answer, government is the problem. Yet I never heard one of them say, well, let's disband Homeland Security, which employs 175,000 government workers, enlarging the size of government. So on one hand, you have the Limbaugh, OxyContin kids talk about reducing government while never saying, let's get rid of the Patriot Act, let's reduce the size of Homeland Security. What part of the government would they like them to reduce? None. Their ultimate game, this neocon movement in America, is to confuse the masses. And they're doing a hell of a good job of it. I have to applaud them for the job that they're doing. They've got 20 to 30 million people conned into conservatism that is strictly anti-constitutional. The changes that have been made in America and the living standard that we enjoy is not a conservative movement. And I get frustrated over the years for pointing out to my small audience that it wasn't the conservatives that gave the working man a living wage. When those communists organized labor in America, organized the coal workers, the oil workers, the farmers, the government workers, the teachers, they organized them for one purpose, and that was to give the working man a living wage in America so he could enjoy the fruits of his labor. Well, apparently the neocons don't want working people to enjoy a living wage. I constantly hear the automobile workers are making too much money. Never heard them say that Rush Limbaugh making $110 million is making too much money. Never heard them once say that Donovan McNabb is making too much money. Baseball players are making too much money. Oh no, but doctors charge too much money. See? And school teachers are making too much money. And the guy that cuts your lawn's making too much money. That's why he has illegal immigrants cutting your grass. They don't talk about the police department and firemen who are not making enough money. Never talk about that. So to educate yourself as to what's going on and be as frustrated as I am, I would suggest that you start some critical thinking. And critical thinking is a guy that makes $110 million a year sitting behind a microphone spreading a bunch of right-wing propaganda, who makes $110 million a year, is bitching about the fact that some automobile guy working where there is paint fumes, where there is a possibility of a machine breaking down and killing him, where the possibility is that he may burn himself out after 25 years on an assembly line. This guy that makes $110 million is bitching about the $35 an hour that the automobile worker is making. Now, if you can tell me that makes sense, ladies and gentlemen, I'm willing to give up my broadcast career, which I'm about to do shortly anyway, and just sit and smell the roses. There is no critical thinking in America, and critical thinking is not even taught. To our chat room, was bin Laden an aid to their plans? The answer is yes, as I pointed out. The plans of the assassination of John F. Kennedy made Lee Harvey Oswald an aid to their plans. They had to set up a patsy. The popularity of bin Laden, whose family owns the biggest construction company in all of Saudi Arabia. Bin Laden is a Saudi. He receives about $300 million a year from his family's business. The people in Saudi Arabia, the people in Afghanistan, the people in Pakistan are not going to turn bin Laden in. Now, if it were money, there's been a $50 million bounty on bin Laden's head since 9/11. Translated that into Afghan currency or Pakistan currency or Iraqi currency, there's a lot more than $50 million. I think most Americans would turn their grandmother in for $50 million tax-free. But with the bounty that is on bin Laden's head, nobody's turned him in. Nobody's turned him in. The ignorance of our culture was demonstrated when the shoes were thrown at President Bush last week. I said at a gathering of friends, if someone killed your parents, blew up your home, would you welcome in the open arms into your community? The answer, no. I said, well, maybe this reporter's family was killed by American bombs. maybe this guy was mad at somebody. Maybe it was the President of the United States. That's convoluted thinking. That's anti-American. And so at this point in my life, ladies and gentlemen, my frustration level, if it gets another half inch, this program will be over. I will quit my job at the commercial radio station and just sit back and laugh and watch the events. The truth to be told does not come into welcomed ears. And so I am pulling back on offering advice. And I guess there's a way to handle this. But rather than end up frustrating myself and staying up at night trying to think of ways to get a point through so that somebody will pay attention, I may decide just to chuck this whole thing as a noble experiment and let folks listen to Limbaugh and the other talk show hosts who want you to follow them and not think for yourself, and will not entertain a thought for themselves. And when you point out to people, and it still doesn't sink in, it doesn't sink in. Certain things are evident, they're in front of your face. And you know, I'm not a religious person, but damn it, some of those prophets of old were pretty sharp. And there's one expression, or whether it's from what part of Scripture, I don't know, but it says, a man may have eyes but can't see, ears that he can't hear. Well, it doesn't mean that he's deaf, and it doesn't mean that he's blind. That means he's got eyes, but he can't see a damn thing. And he has ears, but he can't hear anything. And somewhere in the upper part of the skull, I suppose, there is a big blank in most people's heads, and nothing sinks in there. Talking to a fellow the other day who really amazed me. Knew what dates movies were made, who the stars were. What ratings it got, did not know the name of his congressman. And I said to myself, ain't no sense in talking to this guy. It's a lost cause. So many of you that may pick this up on the archive, because we have no audience right now, since it is between 4 to 6, or 4 to 5 rather, I guarantee you the biggest percent of the people right now in America, and only about 25% ever read the papers or think for themselves, are just sitting, well, we got to wait. Rush Limbaugh is going to tell us what to do, and we'll get financial advisors and they'll tell us what to do, and we'll go to the bank and they'll tell us what to do. And you're all waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do, when with proper training and proper education and self-education, self-discipline, self-moral code, you probably will be able to predict better for the year 2009 than they can. And this reporter said to me, he said, Irv, what's your solution? I said, I'll tell you what my solution is, first of all, before the first of the year. Review your life for the year 2008, from January of 2008 till December 2008, and see the error of your ways and the mistakes that you made, financially, socially, morally, educationally. And if you make the same mistakes in 2009, you're going to have the same results in December of 2009 that you had in 2008. I don't like to look back because it serves no purpose whatsoever. But if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. So take a few moments out, look back at 2008, and say, where did I go wrong? What am I doing wrong? And what have I done that's wrong? So regardless of what comes down the pike in 2009, A, I'll be a better person for it. B, I'll be more content. C, I'll be happier. And D, by December of 2009, I'll have a better result. So that's basically my advice for a resolution that this reporter asked me. What's your answer? I said, my answer is this. If you're going in a direction and you know you're going the wrong way, do you continue to go that way? You make a U-turn, you come back, you start from ground zero, and you don't go in the same direction you went before because you're not getting where you want to go. I know pressures are tough when you've got a commitment, and if you have children, you got to get them to Little League, to the baseball, and beep, 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 beep. I met a young man today who does the news for me. Delightful young man. Will be a success in broadcasting. And I said, we have spoiled our children. I've lived here in this house for 20 years on a corner property, and have yet to have a kid ring my doorbell and ask to shovel snow. And I said to this young man, are you spoiled? He's in college. He says, yes. Yes, my parents spoiled me. But he says, I won't make that mistake with my children. The good book says, as you sow, so shall you reap. If you plant a seed a certain way, that's what's going to come up. To our chat room, it's because we're taught to get along and don't fight against them. We need more people like you on television. Well, I thank you for the compliment. But in a free society, my dear friend, you don't need leaders. You need self-education. Do it yourself. And although I'm a Jew, born a Jew, will die a Jew, not a, quote, practicing religious Jew, the man that Christians admire and celebrated his birthday yesterday, I found very fascinating, especially the Sermon on the Mount. And the words were very prophetic. The unfortunate thing is, nobody today of the Christian faith can repeat it or know what the hell a man said. But you'll follow blindly. There are great men, educators, politicians, in all disciplines. But the Christian faith has prostituted the man Jesus Christ. I repeat, the Christian faith has prostituted the man Jesus Christ. in my opinion. The word rabbi does not mean leader. The word rabbi means teacher. Jesus Christ was a Jewish rabbi, not a priest, not a minister, not a Christian. Jesus Christ was a teacher, not a preacher. He was a teacher, not a leader. I would say about 60% of the Sermon on the Mount was one where the man Jesus put the responsibility on the flock to educate themselves and to become teachers themselves. But religion, like anything else, will prostitute a concept for their own financial or power reading and interpret it so the masses will then think they've got a leader. Clergymen of all denominations, from the Pope to the Rabbi to the Imam, if you follow scriptural teaching and writing, were to teach people, not to lead them. And the reason that the man Christ rejected the concept of leadership is because the pharaohs and the prostitutes in the Jewish temples got away from being teachers and they became leaders. And so the man Jesus saw the dangers of leadership and placed the burden of responsibility of education moral standards on us, not on the church, not on the synagogue, not on the temple. But we've fallen victim to the same thing in entertainment, in broadcasting, religion. We're looking for a leader to lead us to the promised land. If you educate yourself, you're in the promised land. If your mind is free of cobwebs of thought, of ideology, then you've freed yourself. No man can put you in slavery mentally except yourself. Nobody can handcuff your brain except you. And so while America has free hands to move around and free feet to play football, we've taken our brains and put handcuffs on our brains because we want a leader. I want teachers. I want our politicians, our bankers, our investment people, our entertainers to teach, not preach. I reject the preacher. Reject them with the internal part of my belly. Don't try to preach to me, teach me. Does it make more sense, ladies and gentlemen? We as parents, a lot of us, and I include myself, have failed abysmally to raise our children because as we were taught to preach, we preach to them rather than take the time to teach them, set by example. We preach to them. And I think it's evident today that we failed our children because we preach to them instead of teach them. And so instead of 300 million people today in America teaching themselves or looking to learn to establish a sane society, a financial stable society among ourselves, we're looking for that leader to rise up, namely Barack Obama. We need a change. We need a change. No, my dear friend, the sign should have said for Barack Obama is that I'm going to change, that you're going to change. Barack Obama is not going to change you. He'll change himself. You have to change you. We don't have the luxury of waiting for somebody to make changes for us. We have to change it ourselves. Inside ourselves, we must change ourselves. We must take an individual new direction from teachers, not preachers. Preaching doesn't work. Preaching arrests the development of your brain because it takes you to accept things blindly. I've seen bumper stickers that said, God said it, I believe it, and that's it. You think for 1 minute that God wanted a bunch of dummies on earth? Do you think that God don't want, if you believe in God, that God don't want you to question? Do you think he doesn't test your faith? How dumb can you be? Including the Pope and other world religious leaders. How dumb you think you be? If you read the scripture, Jesus loved the challenge because he could teach the answers to every one of your questions. And so people will be more likely to accept preaching than teaching. Think about it. You go into church or synagogue or temple, and the head clergyman is up there yelling against sin and adultery and pornography and alcoholism and gambling, and everybody goes, "Yay, that's good preaching, man, that's good preaching." But then he points his finger at you and said, "Listen, I understand your wife came to me and told me that you got a gambling habit and you spent all the money. Couldn't pay the bills, couldn't feed your family. You, my dear friend, are a sinner." You'd kill the guy. You'd kill the guy. But if he stands up there and says, "Gambling is a sin and you mustn't," you'll be saying, "This is full of shit anyway, I'm going to gamble tomorrow." Hey, what the true him? You know I'm telling you the truth. But if he takes the time to teach you and you teach yourself, you're not going to get anything for nothing in this world. So you'll sit there in front of that little slot machine, you'll sit there in front of that lottery ticket, and you'll pray to win the lottery. What a disgrace, what a waste of prayer. So in closing, I say for the year 2009, I'll talk about it again. Take a piece of paper and a pencil in the quiet between your television programs, your football games, your Bill O'Reillys, whatever you watch, soap operas, and write down the things that you personally did that were wrong to yourself. Not to your neighbor, not to your children, but the things that you personally did that were wrong in the year 2008. And say to yourself in December, am I happy with what I did last year? Did I accomplish anything? Do I feel more secure? And if the answer is no, then change your direction for the year 2009. Not to be redundant, but if you do the same thing in 2009 that you did in 2008, you're going to end up with the same result. Listen to new voices. Listen to new ideas. Search out new goals. Look for the thing that's different. Don't follow the crowd all the time. Be observant. It's a hell of a world out there. But if you listen to the drum beaters like the OxyContin Kid and those who have a political, financial, and moral agenda, you're going to lose. You're a loser. I can tell the loser. There's 20 million losers that listen to Limbaugh. There's 10 million that listen to Med. They're losers. They're the people that are searching for a leader. The Hannitys. Even some religionists. They don't want you to be a winner because a winner is a free, independent thinker whose mind can't be controlled to do their bidding. If you help yourself, you help the community. You help your family. You help one another. If you follow, you don't accomplish anything. I may be a little philosophical in my old age. Maybe the type of program that people are not interested in. So I think maybe, and this is not a threat because I have no financial advantage in doing this program, and I am not making any financial advantage by working at the radio station, WBCB. I love the folks up there. I love the opportunity. But it just isn't worth it. And I said to a friend of mine last night, you know, I never fell in love with a hunk of iron like an automobile, a set of bricks like a house, or an ideology. I will dump out of it rather than suffer with it. I'm Irv Homer. Once again, we've been broadcasting from irvhomer.com. My website is www.irvhomer.com. Email me at evilirv@irvhomer.com. We're interested in your comments. And once again, if you have a computer problem, the place to call is 215-322-8685. 215-322-8685. RGH Computer Services, 24 hours a day, are at your service. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, I am not your preacher. Hopefully, I'm your teacher. Until the next time.